lead us. When we try to substitute platitudes for your really loving each other, lead us. And when we claim to be following you, hold us to it. Lead us. Our path must be yours. Our words must be yours. Our hearts and minds must be yours. Lord, make it so. In the great name of the risen Jesus Christ, we praise him.
Have you ever had an adult tell you what to do?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Like what kinds of things do they tell you what to do? Oh, okay, so always, put you to bed and never skip dinner. Okay. What about you? What do they tell you to do? Well, let me ask you this. So, do you always say yes? And if I were to ask your parents, would they say that? Okay, all right. So, do you ever say no? I appreciate your candor. Do you ever say no? Yeah, so most of the time we say yes, right? Because we know that they're looking out for us and they care about us and they want good for us. And the same thing is true for us about God. Sometimes we say no, but really we should say yes. Because God's always looking out for us. God's always wanting the best for us. So when you guys get home and you're around people who care about you, I want you to talk about how to obey God more. And maybe every now and then your parents too, okay? You just got to get them to hold you. Okay. All right, well then let's pray. Okay, I've got one there. All right. I hear you. Dear God, thank you, God. Help me, God. Change me, God. Help others, God. Thank you, God. Amen. All right. Well, you can go with Miss Amy to fill together. So someday you're going to have to explain to me why she likes it. But okay. So, how many of you like that word? Is that one any better? Okay. This is better though, right? We say that a lot, and you should just follow everybody, right? No? Okay, we got to be a little discerning. All right, what about that? That's good, isn't it? Oh, depends. Depends on what? What you're giving into? All right. What about that? That's good, isn't it? In traffic. Well, okay. So what about that? So what?
Tom Petty says no.
Tom Petty says no. Okay. What about that?
That's usually bad.
Usually bad.
Bad.
Well, but what, as a person, though, what if you say, look, don't cave in, or that you should cave in? I mean, isn't that a good thing? I mean, what about that? I mean, the truth is, right, all these words, all these phrases, they make the American independent in us bristle, doesn't it? Because, you know, at the end of the day, we really want life on our terms. We want it to exist on my terms, and you want it to exist on your terms. But is that really possible? Because at the end of the day, don't we always exist on our terms? None of us live in a vacuum. We live in a world that happens to have other people in it, that has cultures, that has forces that have been around much longer than we are, and we're just a part of it. When we look at the grand scale of history, I mean, what are we? Take astronomy, for example. If you think about how big the Earth is compared to the rest of the universe, how significant does the Earth really feel? But at the end of the day, when we're talking about our existence, when we're talking about who we are, well, we don't really feel that small, especially if we care about ourselves and about what we think. But let me just ask, how many of you feel like you can say that every belief that you have is your own? You're furrowing your brow. I guess it means no. Every belief you have is something you've been taught. Most of them? You agree with that? Grudgingly?
Maybe not.
Maybe not gravity? Although, but I mean, why do you believe in gravity? Because you fall.
Yeah. And if you don't float.
Yeah, you get taught it. At the end of the day, think about the ways in which you approach things. Think about how you come to things. I mean, especially when we're talking about culture, right? I mean, we participate in culture. We have our choices, but at the end, we're a part of it, and we understand ourselves to be a part of it. We don't really control all of it. Much of it is given to us, but we are a part of it. Same thing is true, right, of how we think about, really? That's the only one?
It's the only one that counts.
Y'all know what this is? Meredith College. What about that?
Oh, yeah.
You've seen that before. Okay, what about that? Okay, how about that?
Yeah. Forest.
All right.
Yeah.
We're just waiting on
All right. What about that?
it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about that?
Wilson.
Okay. Mount Olive University. That's right. That's right. Don't know that? You've seen that before? All right. What about that? Okay. Whoa, wait. So what's that doing? Well, because if you think about it, right, we talk about we're part of a team, we talk about rooting for our team, and we even maybe went to school at some of the places in question, right? But how many of you are responsible for the school being there? How many of you designed the curriculum? How many of you recruited for the sports teams? How many of you played on any of those sports teams? And yet we root for them like it's our family, like our lives are at stake. I remember when we moved here from Germany, that the last time we went to Fayetteville, and when first day of school, I got to school, and one of the first questions that people asked me was, "So who do you root for?" And I was like, "What?" I had no idea what they were talking about. And eventually, I got educated. I'm still not going to tell you who I root for, but we gather our beliefs together, even for things that don't have the same stakes. And so whatever you want to believe about guns, for example, how did you come to the things that you believe about the issue? How did you come to your ideas about policy surrounding the issue? Same thing with war. Whatever you think about war, however you feel about it, where did those ideas, where did those feelings come from? I mean, how many of you know who this is? Why do you know who this is? It's on the dollar bill. Not in school. He's even got a holiday named after him, right? Moderately important because he's the first president of the United States. I mean, you know, yeah. What about him? Really?
Peanut butter.
George Washington.
Gosh, how many of you like peanut butter?
Yep.
You owe him your life. George Washington Carver. Right? He's the one who developed all those processes. He's the one who innovated peanut butter. What do you believe about money?
I don't have
And
enough.
where you don't believe in money?
I believe I don't have enough.
Fair enough. But your ideas about money, I mean, where did they come from? How did you get them? And why do you hold on to the particular ideas that you do? We could say the same thing about politics, couldn't we? I mean, at the end of the day, where do your notions come from? And why do you feel so strongly about them if you do? You know, when we took this picture behind the bands, one of the things that was remarkable to me looking at it, looking at all my siblings, looking at my parents, looking at my nieces and nephews, looking at my family. Where did I get my ideas about family? Well, a lot of the people responsible are in that picture. You know, with my dad being in the military, my siblings and I, we traveled around with my dad and my mom, and we were kind of our own crew. We had to learn to be. And some of my ideas about connection, some of my ideas about people come from those folks. But why do I hold on to them? Why do I know them? I mean, whatever we might think about our own family here, I mean, at the end of the day, we're a church not because we necessarily all believe the same things, but there's enough affinity that we kind of hang together. And some of that affinity comes from all over the place. There's baggage that we bring to the table, literally. But what do we really do with it? And of course, choice is part of the partnership that we have with all of these things. We choose to accept, we choose to hold on, we choose to see, we choose to hear, we choose to believe. There's this song by the Doobie Brothers, and in the course of the song goes like, well, I don't think I can sing it right now, but no, I'm going to try. What a fool believes he sees, no wise man has the power to reason away. What seems to be is always better than nothing at all. You ever heard that before? Okay. What a fool believes he sees, no wise man has the power to reason away what seems to be is always better than nothing at all. Why their lead singer wanted it to be that high, I have no idea. He's crazy. But the song, of course, is talking about a man who can't accept the fact that the woman that he's fallen in love with is leaving. He can't get his mind around it. How many things have we come to believe, so much so that we become blind to all else? That we set aside our good sense. I remember when I was dating somebody in particular that wasn't me, and this person had broken up with me twice. And my family was trying to figure out a way to try and help me understand, maybe you should let her go. But they never really said that to me because they knew I wasn't ready. My beliefs about what I felt about her, what I thought about her, kept getting in the way. And so it didn't matter what they said, until I could deal with what was in my own head, I couldn't hear them. I couldn't receive it. And I wonder sometimes about us doing that with God. One of the things that solidifies our beliefs, right, is when we take action with them. When we act on them. When we do something with those beliefs. Well, what are we doing with our beliefs? And, by the way, we know intuitively, reflexively, deeply, that we are a part of something that's much larger than ourselves. We know it. We know it because every time we look around, we see other people. We didn't get here by ourselves. When we look at our military, we see folks who come from all different kinds of backgrounds, but at the end, they are beyond their personal direction and decisions. They're even beyond their own personal morality. Because now they're part of a unit. They're part of a troop. They're part of a ship. They're part of a flight wing. And they've got to decide to hold each other's back. To look out for one another, even at the cost of their own lives. It becomes something larger. And this is one of the reasons why I think Saul was arresting and in some cases murdering Christians. Back in the day, when they were first getting started, Saul held the coat of a bunch of people who were stoning Stephen because he claimed that Jesus Christ was the Messiah, that Jesus was the Lord. And Saul went and even got authority to go out and to wreak havoc on these communities that he felt like was threatening his very faith. This is Acts chapter 9, verses 1 through 9. So meanwhile, Saul was still spewing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest, seeking letters to the synagogues in Damascus. If he found persons who belonged to the way, that is, Christians, whether men or women, these letters would authorize him to take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. Now, during the journey, as he approached Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven encircled him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice asking, "Saul, Saul, why are you harassing me?" Saul asked, "Who are you, Lord?" "I am Jesus, whom you are harassing," came the reply. "Now, get up and enter the city. You will be told what you must do." Those traveling with him stood there speechless. They heard the voice, but saw no one. And after they picked Saul up from the ground, he opened his eyes, but he couldn't see. So they led him by the hand into Damascus. For 3 days he was blind and neither ate nor drank anything. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So there's a word for what Jesus did here, right? We call it intervention. Right? If your friends or even people who aren't your friends do an intervention on you, what are they doing? They're stopping you. They're trying to help you. At least they think so. Right? But what are they helping you with?
Bad behavior.
Confronting you with a problem you have.
Bad behavior.
Some bad behavior, at least in their minds. Right? And in many cases, it's a behavior for which your awareness is messed up. Right? That's why when you're dealing with an alcoholic, you have to intervene because sometimes they don't even recognize that they're sick. Right? And so here's Jesus intervening in Saul's life. Another way to talk about this is Jesus said that you're wrong. How many of you enjoy being told that? Okay, why not? What's so wrong with being wrong? Say what? It means you're not right. So being right is the key here, right? Okay, so what's so great about being right?
You're right.
Thank you for that, Sean. But what about it? What does it matter?
You might feel guilty about something you've done.
You might feel guilty about something you've done, so it's important to feel right so you feel less guilty?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
It makes you feel good about yourself. I think it strokes your ego.
Strokes your ego, can make you feel good about yourself? Sure.
You don't mind if people find out when you're right, but you like it when they find out that you're wrong.
Okay, did you hear what she said? But why is that the case?
Because we've been taught that you shouldn't be wrong.
Ever?
Well,
I mean, because here's the thing, right? How many of you have ever been wrong? Okay, so it's a really stupid standard, isn't it? The idea of being right all the time. It's impossible. And from time to time, we will be wrong. It'll probably even happen today. The day ain't even over yet, or this week. And when it happens, do we actually spend time thinking about the fact that we've been wrong? And why? And what we might be able to do about it? How often do we reflect on the times that we've been wrong? When I think about school especially, for example, and I wonder about the times that teachers have been correcting my papers and I see all that red ink. I mean, does it make you feel good? No. But isn't it a good thing? Because here's the thing, if I didn't have any red ink, why am I going to school? What do I need school for? If I'm never wrong, why do I need to bother with school? If I can be on the road and do whatever I want to, Why do I need to go to the DMV if I'm always right? If I always have the right of way? And if we come into this place claiming to be Christians with any notion at all that we don't make mistakes, that we are never wrong, we are deluding ourselves. And it's a joke that's not really even that funny. Because lives are at stake. Our own lives are at stake. We will be wrong. And sometimes God needs to issue a corrective. And then the question becomes, will we receive it? Are we even open to it? Do we like it? God's constantly trying to give us direction, trying to show us the way to go, and we resist. This is Acts chapter 9, now verses 10 through 20. So in Damascus, there was a certain disciple named Ananias. And the Lord spoke to him in a vision. Ananias, he answered, "Yes, Lord." The Lord instructed him, "Go to Judas's house on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He's praying." In a vision, he has seen a man named Ananias enter and put his hands on him to restore his sight. Ananias countered, "Lord, I've heard many reports about this man. People say he's done horrible things to your holy people in Jerusalem. He's here with authority from the chief priests to arrest everyone who calls on your name." The Lord replied, "Go. This man is the agent I have chosen to carry my name before Gentiles, kings, and Israelites. I will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name." Ananias went to the house. He placed his hands on Saul and said, "Brother Saul." Can you believe that? "Brother Saul, the Lord sent me, Jesus, who appeared to you on the way as you were coming here. He sent me so that you could see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit." Instantly, flakes fell from Saul's eyes and he could see again. He got up and was baptized. After eating, he regained his strength. He stayed with the disciples in Damascus for several days. Right away, he began to preach about Jesus in the synagogues. "He is God's Son," he declared. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So you got to really respect Ananias, right? I mean, he's not an idiot. He's well aware not just of Saul's reputation, but actually what he's done. He's afraid. And he names that fear. God's telling him to go, and he says, "Wait. But then God does something that I think is remarkable. Instead of saying, "Go, lest I smite thee," he didn't do that. He says, "Go," and here's why. This is the picture. Here's the plan. He actually engages Ananias' fear. It sounds a lot like some of what we talked about last week, with Jesus appearing to the disciples and saying, "Look and touch and see." God meets us where we are in order to take us further than we thought we could go. Ananias probably never thought that he could get past the wall of what Saul had done. And yet there he is, placing his hands on Saul and calling him what?
Brother.
Brother. Brother. It doesn't matter if you're talking about hunger, poverty, race, wealth, policy, reputation, stature. Nothing is impossible for God. And because we are children of God, therefore nothing really is impossible for us. And this knowledge should change us. It should change our approach. It should lend us courage. Because knowledge really does change things. And it always does. Back when Mandy and I first got engaged, I think I've shared with you that her grandfather was against the wedding, was against the engagement, and told her so. And Mandy and I were upset about it, and in my own mind, I just formed an opinion about the man. even though I had never met him yet. Didn't know him. Couldn't have picked him out of a lineup. And yet, here we are, we go to his house, and I'm at a gathering with all those people. Okay? And him and his wife. And we're sitting in there in this sunroom, and all of a sudden, everyone evaporates. Except Ben. He's still sitting in his chair. He's nursing a wound because he hurt his arm, and his mean, fat rat dog named Buster is sitting on his lap. And I know everybody left as part of some plan. I know you say no, Tom, but it's true. Y'all all left me there. You ditched me. But I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at him, and we're talking about the weather, we're talking about, this, that, and the other, and the dog keeps coming over, and I'm telling the dog, I will kick you into the next county if you bite me. I don't care who you are. Well, this voice overwhelmed me. And it wasn't some booming voice from the sky, and it wasn't me. But the voice said, the dog shouldn't get something for nothing. And I interpreted that to mean I should be able to pet the dog. And I said, what? No, I'm not doing that. But I obeyed. Put my hand down there, the dog sniffed at it, growled. I kind of clenched my fist up, and then he walked away. He keeps coming back, and eventually the dog jumps up in my lap, sits down, and I'm petting the dog, and I'm thinking, okay, he's kind of close. He might bite my face, and then there's nothing I can do. But Ben is sitting across from me, and his mouth is gaping open. And he says, that dog doesn't do that for anybody. He called me by my name ever since. And I came to learn so much about him and his service in the Air Force and his time he spent in Japan. I learned about him being a mechanic, a really good mechanic. I learned about the love that he had for his family. And in the end, he made me a part of that. Even told his buddies, his war buddies, that I was his grandson. And I came to respect him and to learn how to see him differently. Knowledge changes things. It can change anything. And the knowledge that we need to hold on to is the fact that God is the one who makes us a family. Now, some of you might know that, back in the day, Loaves and Fishes was our local food pantry. Y'all remember Loaves and Fishes? And it kind of collapsed underneath scandal, which is a whole different discussion. But the churches kind of got together, and we've established a new one, and it's housed at First Baptist, and it's called Manna Market. And I think it's twice a month now. But anyway, it's literally a market. They lay all the food out, kind of like it's a grocery store. They hand bags to people, and they go, and they can get prescribed amounts of their choice, fill the bag up, and go home with enough food for the month. It's great. It's really great. But because we lost our main source for the food, we've really got to ramp it up. And so the mission committee is issuing a challenge to us. For the next 4 weeks, as you come to worship, every single person, bring a non-perishable food item. Please make it new. Don't make it just this side of expired, because we don't know how long it might have to sit on the shelf. So bring something new. But everyone bring something, so that we can restock those shelves and we can really help feed all those people. And in one sense, try and walk some in their shoes and get a sense of pushing back on the blight that is hunger in our own community. Because when we obey, I wonder what it is that we will see. Because when Paul obeyed, when Ananias obeyed, the flakes fell from Saul's eyes and he could see again. I wonder what we will see. I wonder what we will know. And I really wonder what we'll believe. Because obeying is not about giving up our freedom. It's about being set free. And obeying is not about believing less. It is about believing more. And obeying is not about giving up, but it is about giving in to something better and beyond us. My brothers and sisters in Christ, may we be obedient. In the name of the one who keeps us from falling. Amen. Lord, we stand in utter gratitude for the gifts of your table and for all that you have provided. And now we ask you to equip us that we might indeed be your blessings to the world. In the great name of Jesus Christ, we pray this together. Amen. As we sing the last song, I'm going to invite the ushers to come forward as we're singing to take up the offering in recognition of where we are with the time. But as we give, let us consider that what we give is a part of our blessing for the world and is a part of our expressions of gratitude. Let us sing together.
All right, let's stand up. We're going to sit.
It's not about giving up our freedom, but being set free. It's not about believing less, but about believing more. It's not about giving up, but about giving in to something better and beyond us. Now get up, take heart. Jesus is calling you. Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed. Hallelujah.
Go in peace.
I want to live